Hi, and welcome to episode 65 of the O-Pod. This is Boston City Councilor Matt O'Malley, and my guest today is just an amazing leader in Boston, someone I've gotten to know a little bit over the last couple of years, and someone that I've wanted to have on this podcast for quite some time. He is a relatively new state representative. He is an Army veteran. He is a Peace Corps veteran. He is an emergency room medical doctor. He is State Representative Jon Santiago. And Representative Doctor, thank you for spending some time with us today.
No, happy to be on. I appreciate a lot of the work you do out in the community. I think, out of all the elected officials in Boston, you're one of the many, I would say, who are out there day in, day out, hustling and meeting with constituents. And, I look up to you and the work that you've done, even long before you were city council. So just thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this.
Well, that means a lot. As I said, and we're going to go through your really remarkable career in a moment. We had scheduled this originally right as sort of the pandemic was unfolding, had to reschedule, and then we had another day, and you were just working, I'm sure, 80 plus hours a week doing two jobs. And then we rescheduled for this date. And it's thank you for joining us, because I want to obviously begin about just talking about the events of the last week. And as a policymaker and as a doctor, I think we would agree. I think everyone would certainly agree that racism is a public health crisis in this country. I'm, feeling worried and concerned and sad. And I say that as, a white guy who has a hell of a lot of privilege. And I can't begin to understand how difficult this must be for our Black and brown neighbors, but I want to try, and I want to, I think it was the DA who said, don't be an ally, be an accomplice, and that's certainly what I'm committed to doing. So I guess the first question is, how are you? How are you doing this week? How are you holding up?
Thank you for framing the discussion. I think you're absolutely right. I think what's been heartening to me over the past week or so are the number of calls I've received from white legislators and colleagues who said, I'm coming from a place of privilege. I don't understand. Help me learn. I'm here to listen. And to me, that's been heartwarming. It's been challenging, but make no mistake. What happened this week has been happening in America for decades, centuries, hundreds of years. And I think given not just what happened with Mr. Floyd and his, untimely murder, but the events of coronavirus and COVID-19. I feel that we're all on edge. And you have a situation where people are feeling desperate, people are feeling hopeless, people have lost their job, their income. They don't know what's going to happen in the next week or the next month. And to have this on top of that, really just not just exposed, but exacerbated all the feelings and tension that we're all having. Yeah. So it's a very trying time. And as if we thought handling COVID-19 wasn't difficult enough. This is something that, we haven't experienced in our country for 100 years.
Yeah.
I've been in the emergency room. So typically I work pre-COVID. I was working Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at the hospital, and every other week. And so just to give you some context, a full-time ER doctor works 3 to 4 shifts a week. And the shifts are about 8 hours because it's a pretty intense job. And so, when you're on, it's all nonstop. You see everything and anything that comes through the door, particularly where I work at Boston Medical Center, which is the biggest safety net hospital and the biggest ER in New England. And so even long before COVID-19, it's an intense place to work. There was a high rate of burnout. And so with COVID-19 added to that was a whole additional complexity. We didn't know much about the disease and the virus. People were scared to work. And over the past couple of weeks, I'd say over a month now, that we've been able to lay down protocols and procedures to have a better environment to treat patients with COVID-19. But I remember in the beginning, literally I was making up things on the fly. People would come into the hospital. Do they have COVID-19? I don't know. We had no idea what the rate and the prevalence of it was. And what we now know is that, so many people have it and so many people can be asymptomatic.
Yeah.
And so was I going to every room dressed up to protect myself from COVID-19? Probably not. When someone gets shot with a gun, we race to the trauma room, and were we covered with, PPE? Probably not. So the mental anguish of, are you exposing yourself? Are you bringing the virus home with you? It was taxing. And this week just showed us that there are many more issues that we have to deal with, the dual pandemic of racism and coronavirus, and that they're related, right?
Yeah.
This virus, what I've been saying, does not see race or class or genetic makeup. It sees opportunity. And the opportunity that it sees is the conditions in so many communities, whether it's Chelsea, Boston, the inequity, the poverty, the lack of a healthcare access. And that results in worsening rates of coronavirus infections, deaths, and hospitalizations. And it also results in more cases of, police brutality. And so these two things are linked.
Yeah, they absolutely are. And it's been, as I sort of think and listen, which both is a local legislator and a human being, it's such an important part now. As we think about, of course, we have there's work we have to do. There are some really strong ideas and other ideas that we have to do as it relates to criminal justice reform, as it relates to public safety. There's also educational opportunities that aren't equal. There's also huge health disparities. And you've seen it. You've been working on these issues before. Economics, environmental justice. How lack of trees and gas leaks can exacerbate respiratory issues, which can make you more susceptible to then, if you get, God forbid, infected with COVID-19, have worse outcomes. So we have so much work to do, and it seems daunting. But I'll tell you, John, earlier today, I was on a call with the mayor and the commissioner, and Tanisha Sullivan, the president of the local NAACP, and a bunch of youth, a bunch of young teenagers. And it was a tough conversation, but it gave me so much hope, and it gave me sort of a renewed focus. Like, we got a hell of a lot of work to do. We're not going to have all the answers. We're going to have some tough conversations. We're going to, have to hear some tough things, but I don't know. I feel like this is a changing point, and
I think you're right. But just to highlight on what you're saying with respect to, how do we find inspiration in these challenging times? I think for those of us who are in public service, and I think about, the other hats I've worn in the past, I got into this because I wanted to serve and I wanted to help people. And I was on a call yesterday, I think with Councilor Campbell, I'm speaking as a Generation Citizen, I believe, all the youth they work with. And what got me into public service, what got me into medicine, or my experiences as a youth, was what I saw on TV, was what was going on in my neighborhood and my family. And those feelings, good or bad, sad or happy, or what inspired me then and will continue to inspire me now. And so when I see people out there protesting, and when I see people out there living their values, that gives me inspiration to keep on doing my work. When I see people delivering food, all the essential workers out there, the same woman who's cleaning up every COVID-19 hospital room, and I see her because I'm in the hospital with her, and she's there day in, day out. It gives me inspiration to keep on going, because it's really going to require all hands on deck approach.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you have been such an inspiration. And I want to get back a little bit, just tell your story, because I think it's such an interesting one. You were born in Puerto Rico, but came to Boston as a young boy.
Yeah, so I was born in Puerto Rico. So Puerto Rico is a small island in the Caribbean. I think it's something like 35 by 180 miles, so it's quite small. But there are a few, diaspora communities in the States, in the mainland, where they kind of congregate. And I think of New York, which is a big one. There's Boston. I think the South End was Boston's first Puerto Rican community.
Yeah.
And there's also parts of Florida. There's actually more Puerto Ricans on the mainland than there are on the island. And so,
I believe it.
Yeah, so we left, so I remember my first memories of growing up in Roxbury. We lived on the corner of Ruth End and Elm Hill, not too far from Humboldt. And this was in the 80s. And I remember living there, and I remember growing up in a very, obviously segregated part of town, which still is today. But this was also in the late 80s, early 90s, the height of our gun violence epidemic in Boston, as you can recall. And I remember, all the typical stuff: subsidized housing, having a family trying to make it, getting your car robbed at least once or twice a year, and just be parked down a couple of streets over. But I also remember that my uncle became sick, And that's what really got me interested and really opened my eyes to the disparity and equity that happens in the city of Boston and in the state and across this country and this world, which I would go on to figure out as I, progressed in my education and my experiences. And ultimately, my uncle, he died of HIV, died of AIDS rather, and he would leave his cousin, or excuse me, his son, was my cousin, who became an AIDS orphan, who was eventually adopted by my grandmother, who I spent a number of years growing up with. But just to see the inequity in how my uncle, who back then was just a poor Latino man, who couldn't access care in the way that other people could.
Yeah.
Mind you, miles away from some of the best hospitals in the world, right? And this, sparked my curiosity, and it led me to a career in public health and medicine. And I think, we ultimately left Boston in the 90s because of the situation in Roxbury, and we actually moved to rural Texas. And I spent some time, I was complete, think about it, you're in the middle of Boston, you get in a car, 6 of us in a small, 4-door car, drive all the way across country, land just in this small town of a couple hundred people just outside Austin, Texas. And my dad saying, "Hey, I hear there's snakes out here." And I remember tiptoeing, I don't know what a snake looks like, right? I'm from the city. And I remember that.
How old were you?
I think I was in grade school. I can't recall what grade exactly.
Were you excited, or were you sad to leave your friends and your comfort zone, or was it a little bit of both?
We had these two, my best friends were these guys named Tan and Ian, 2 Vietnamese guys that we lived across the street in Boston. And I know we remained pen pals for years afterward.
Yeah.
But such is life. Things happen. I think my dad wanted to stay. My mom wanted to leave given the conditions that we were living in, and for a better opportunity. And so we moved out to the country. The plan was for my parents to work in Austin, this kind of up and coming city, which is a great city.
Yeah.
We lived out in the country. And so it was horses and cows. And I became somewhat of a cowboy out there, and, baling hay and all that stuff, and working out there. And I didn't have any of these animals like these horses and cows and stuff. All my friends did. But you learn to be, to live that life. And so spent a number of years growing up there. And then I went to college in Austin, actually. And then
UT, right?
UT Austin, yeah.
Yeah.
Then I got
Austin, by the way, for our listeners, is the Jamaica Plain, or the south end of Texas. It is. I have family down there. My cousin Lauren down there, and keep Austin weird is their unofficial motto.
As you said, the cultural oasis in the conservative wasteland.
Indeed.
That's how some people describe it. I have a lot of love for Texas, but I had some different opinions.
Yeah.
So I went to college down there, but the public health, the HIV/AIDS interest always stuck with me, and so I planned to go to medical school, but I wanted to get some experience before I go to medical school. And I heard about the Peace Corps.
Yeah.
Which, for those of you guys don't know, it's when you spend about 2 years abroad working in an underserved community, and this is where I met Joe Kennedy, actually, because we were both in the Dominican Republic. He was wrapping up things, and I was head of things, and I actually physically took over one of his. It's a small world, right?
It really is.
I remember okay, there's an extra grant with some leftover money. It's a guy named Joseph Kennedy. It's okay, we'll figure out, And so I moved to the Dominican Republic, and actually lived with Haitian immigrants there. And
what part of the DR?
Yeah, so I know you know the DR pretty well, given your constituency, and folks. All your folks are from Bani, right?
Bani, viva los Banilejos.
Exactly.
Best mangoes in the world. This isn't a prop. You can see that I'm on message. Oh, this is a podcast. I just held up a mango from Bani, but over the Zoom.
No, you're absolutely right. So I was living in the northern part. There was a province called the name of Puerto Plata, and I lived between Puerto Plata and another close to a city called Imbert, Imbert. And so Joe Kennedy lived literally across the street from his big water natural park project that he had. He did a tremendous job there. But with Joe Kennedy's son, I think the tale that he tells is often that he saw the disparity between the Dominicans and the Haitians.
Yeah.
This poor Haitian, which was, you couldn't, make it up if you were to walk in this Haitian community. The density, the poverty, the violence. Yeah. And so I had read at that time, Partners in Health, what's his name? Paul Farmer, the book about health. And so I was like, give me the hardest job. I want to be with the poorest of the poor, completely like this young 20-something-year-old idealist. And I said, put me in that place. I didn't speak a lick of Haitian Creole.
Mm.
It was, a place that we weren't supposed to go to because there was nothing set up there.
Yeah.
So, but I made I pretty much persuaded my boss to send me there. So he sends me there, and it was a tough experience. A lot of, violence, tremendous amount of poverty, a lot of hunger, and they didn't have any restrooms. So you had, hundreds of people who had no toilets. They would literally go to the sugarcane field. And so these Haitian immigrant towns, they were situated in the midst of sugarcane fields. And so you'd crawl through all this sugarcane that was about, I don't know, 4 feet high, and you'd find this this shanty town essentially. And so I lived there, and Joe had tried to, build some latrines there. And it was just hard because, as you know, the poorer some of these communities are, the least organized they may be, disenfranchised, they have no support from the government. And so here I am, doesn't speak a lick of Haitian Creole. I'm literally dropped off there. And, and I just know that Joe Kennedy had tried to do a latrine project, got some money for me, and had some initial discussions, but, we were nowhere near where we needed to be. But over the course of, almost 2 years, we were able to build latrines. I think we built like 30 something. And organize the community and do some youth group stuff. So I was there for about 2 years. And then at this time, I developed an interest in Haitian culture, Haitian language, and history. I'm sure you're probably familiar. The second country in the whole Western Hemisphere to get independence after the United States of America, a big slave revolt. I mean, Haitian folks, I have tremendous respect for them. So all my buddies went to go to work and live in Haiti, and I wanted to do that, but I said I have to learn French because you can't walk in the city hall in Haiti and speak, Creole, because it's like you got to speak the language of government. So I said, I spoke some Haitian Creole at the time, but I said, let me learn French. So my buddies went over there, and they went to work pre-earthquake, during earthquake, and post-earthquake. And I actually went to Montreal to learn French. And I did some Haitian diaspora research in public health and that sort of thing. But one thing led to another. I was supposed to go to medical school after 2 years abroad, but I had the bug bit me, so I spent a year in Montreal as well doing that work. Then I got a Fulbright fellowship to go to Paris and do similar work out there. I spent some time in Central Western Africa. And I said, listen, I got to stop because medical school is a long time. It's 4 years plus residency. So I said, I got to get the hell back. And so when I actually applied to medical school from Paris, I took the MCAT in Paris. And but I came back in 2009 or 10 and actually moved back to Boston with $70 in my wallet and crashed at my friend's house in Cambridge for like 4 months while I tried to get a job.
Wow.
I actually worked at the Boston Public Health Commission for a while.
Oh, wow.
While I applied to so I did the HIV.
Under Barbara Ferrer?
Exactly. Yeah, she had no idea who I was. Yeah. And so there I went to med school, but during med school I kept my place. I went to Yale, which is in Connecticut, but I kept my place in Boston, so I'd be back and forth. And at this time, the role of politics and government started to interest me because what I realized in the Peace Corps or in France or in Africa was that if I wanted to get anything done, I had to know the local city councilor. I had to have, know the mayor. We had to cut deals and compromise. And I said to myself, well, you know what, this might be something of interest. And so, I wanted to be a physician because I got tired of talking about poverty in these rooms and I remember walking out of like boardrooms or whatever, and there'd be a poor person say, help me. I didn't have any skills with my hand. And my friends, minority guys, they all had skills with their hands. They were like mechanics, they drive trucks. And I was like the weakling who couldn't do any of that. So I wanted a skill with my hands, so I became a physician. But yeah, so we went to med school. Then I got my dream job at Boston Medical Center. I'm working in the emergency room. And then, my interest has always been in public health and in more, upstream, the fact that someone comes in with a gunshot wound, a stroke, or a heart attack, that's probably related to what's going on in their home and in their community. Yeah. And so I wanted to address those issues, particularly the opioid epidemic. And ultimately, that's why I decided to run for office.
I mean, I'm just, I know that story. I've known you. I've followed you. I've watched or I've observed your career, but just hearing it again is so inspirational. And I think how, I think about you living in the DR and working in Haiti and understanding the incredible tension between Haitians and Dominicans and what that means, and then applying that to medical school and then working at Boston Medical Center. It's not a wealthy, expensive hospital, and it's just addressing sort of economic inequities. And then the important work we're doing now, obviously on COVID, but on structural overt institutional racism and sort of addressing those divides and just how that harkens back. And just your time, throughout the world, that's given you such a unique an important perspective these days.
Bring up an interesting point. I think it's been said in the last couple of weeks in the media and amongst stuff that we were facing 400 years of systemic racism, and poverty, and I remember saying those exact words when I was in the Peace Corps. I remember having my almost Che Guevara moments and being so frustrated with the system. And how do you create change and a revolution and this and that. And I remember, what is some American kid, so what's some white kid from Kansas going to come to the Dominican Republic and help this poor community out? You're really up against 400 years of oppression. And I was very critical of the Peace Corps when I first got there. I was just while I was there, I was like, well, what are you going to do? This is all the ultimate Band-Aid. And it is true to some extent, right? But there are some short-term, long-term things that you can do. And ultimately, over the course of a couple of years there, I saw some incredible things done. I saw that white kid who didn't speak Spanish, come to the Dominican Republic, become fluent, learn how to dance, install a whole water system for a village, to share and work with his colleagues and organize the community. And that ultimately, gave me hope that, listen, man, we can cross division. We can work together, that the world is so much bigger than, you and I. And it changed my outlook. And I said, listen, you don't have to be perfect, right? Let's not let perfection be the enemy of the good. I see this in politics all the time, right? And it's so easy to throw the bumper sticker language out there. Create real change, to organize communities, to achieve some success. It takes a lot of hard work. And that's what I've, starting to understand now in an elected office.
It takes a lot of hard work, and it also takes nuance and complexity. And I think of that sort of, how I approach the work, but particularly now that it's not simple and it's not easy, and it can't, and we, things in our line of work can move slowly. I would give, credit in many aspects to our response to COVID-19. Government moved a hell of a lot quicker than it ever has. The thought that beer and wine could now be delivered from local restaurants without nary a community meeting or a civic association meeting, that's crazy. But it was important, and it was a good opportunity to help these small businesses. But I wonder if you've sort of noticed it. You ran for office. You are among the incredibly small and elite club, of which I am not a member, where you won your first time running.
You get lucky every once in a while,
Yeah. And you ran a fantastic campaign. You took out a well-respected, I shouldn't say took out, you defeated more people voted for you than a well-respected, longtime incumbent. You really sort of captured something, and then you join, you're sworn in. Has it been, you're completing you're running for re-election in November, and you'll be re-elected to your second full term, but has it been sort of frustrating because you have that activist spirit, you have that sort of career of just doing things and pushing through, that things can move down slowly? And that's the first part. Has it been frustrating, the slow pace of government? And then the second part of the question is, how confident are you that we're going to see some rapid change on many of these issues going forward?
So you bring up some good points. I think, am I frustrated? At times, for sure. That's in medicine, that's in the emergency room, that's in government, that's in my own relationships with people. But that's part of the process, right? And if you go into something, as if all the answers, and you have all, if you have all the skills to get it done, that's probably not going to be the case. So one thing I do in medicine, when I was a medical student, is I would often, at medical school, the third year is probably the most important year, where every month you spend a different rotation on a different service. So 1 month you're with the surgeons, next month you're with the ENT guys, next month you're with the gynecologist, and so you get a taste of everything, right? And so what I would do often is that I would spend the first couple of days on the rotation with the nurses,
Mm.
the techs, because I'm a big, like, let's learn it from the ground up, right?
Yeah.
And as a result, in my life, maybe the accusation is made that maybe he starts off kind of slow, but I think you finish kind of fast, right? And so, you work with the nurses, you work with the techs, you understand how these pieces fit together. And so that in given this comprehensive understanding of it, then you can move faster when you are in a position of power. And so that's been my approach to medicine. And so when I go to a new place or a new hospital, or even like, I'm working tonight, we'll be in the trauma room before the trauma rooms get crazy and everyone's coming in with all kinds of things, who's on the team, and it really is the ultimate team experience, I might be the lead doctor or the trauma doctor, but it's like the nurses, the techs, they all play an important role in this. And, we have to operate as a unit. And so when I enter the legislature, you're right. I'm a person who wants action, right? I'm an ER doctor. It's like, let's move, let's make a decision. But at the same time, I sit back and listen. And I think, my first year, and I still do, and I think this is something I'm going to keep on doing, is listening and learning. I'm in a new territory. There are ground rules there that have been set up for decades, if not hundreds of years. And there's a method to the madness. I may not always agree to it, but I need to understand it before I move forward with certain things.
Mm.
And as a result, particularly at a place like the State House, and I think, a lot of people get frustrated with the pace of things. A lot of people would accuse the House of being this body that doesn't move, that is lazy, that is not progressive. And I would disagree. I think there are a lot of well-meaning people who want to move things forward. And I think I've been most surprised by how smart my colleagues are. There's a lot of talk out there on social media, and social media can be the most coward kind of outlet. It's like these people are this and that. But I've been so amazed by how thoughtful these folks are, how intelligent they are. I mean, here I am, like, exchanging reading lists, talking about like a 20th century, early 20th century, like, economic policy in New England with like some guy from Worcester.
Yeah.
People thought he was just like, like he wouldn't know anything about that. And so I've been really heartened by the relationships. And again, in politics, so much is it, as you know, and you're really good at this, is the importance of relationships and communication.
It's the coin of the realm, and and I think it's why you're successful, and I think it's as an elected official, but I also think it's why you're so important in the state legislature and as a leader in Boston. Not only your background, but the fact that you're willing to cultivate those relationships. Know that it sounds corny, right? And it sounds like, we're a couple of elected officials saying we need to, go out for beers with people from the other party. Well, yeah, we kind of do, or at least need to listen to each other. And, there's some quicker action that we need to take now more. It is so aware, we are so aware of that, but also just sort of, I guess I can so identify with what you just said, because my background's different than yours, and I had been involved sort of in government and politics and campaigns before, so quite a long history in the political world. So I wasn't shocked by the slow pace, but I would still say to a younger version of myself, take time to do your due diligence. Don't rush into everything. You don't need to. If there's a critical tweet, you don't need to react right away, because there's more nuance to it, and you need to sort of.
There's so much nuance, and that's one thing I'm listening. And now, and I'm glad that I have mentors and people teaching me things in the State House. People who politically sometimes we disagree on things.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in emotional intelligence and understanding different people's perspectives.
Yeah.
But make no mistake. I mean, if push comes to shove, I mean, there are things you need to stand up for, but you never win an argument by telling the other person that they're stupid.
Yeah.
And these are people where you have to build coalitions and you have to work together. I mean, this is a democracy, and you have to do 50+1, and you have to get buy-in from people. And again, you never gain friends or win the arguments of the day by telling people that they're stupid, wrong, and that you're better, you're smarter than they are.
Yeah. It's well said. Well, we only have a couple minutes left, and I know you have to work tonight. So what time does your shift? Is it? I mean, so
I'm taking. I've been like under the guillotine these past 20 weeks. So under COVID-19, I've decided to pretty much double my emergency room responsibilities. So I've been doing every Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But
Wow.
worse than that, I've been doing the overnight shift. And why that makes it more difficult is because you have to flip your sleep schedule. And so, what I'll do is, like, in a couple hours, I'll take a nap for 2 or 3 hours, and I'll go in at 11 o'clock, and I'll work till 7 o'clock in the morning. And then I'll try to, like, switch to an overnight, sleep schedule for like 3 days. And on Monday morning, I'll be finished at 7 a.m. And, I try to take a couple hours of sleep, and then it's like back to like state house, like, legislative, the constituency stuff. We just
Which
passed.
never ends.
Yeah, we just passed 2 big bills this week, this restaurant relief bill, a voting bill that I was quite active in introducing a bill that I was happy that they adopted a number of the things that we had proposed. So it's busy, but you know what? I would not rather be anywhere else. I think people like you and me and so many of us out there, we thrive in these situations. And I'm just happy to serve, and I really do feel like I have the 2 best jobs in the world. And, for as long as the people of the 9th Suffolk will have me, I'll be there.
Yeah. You told this, well, they are very lucky to have you as well. You told this story, I think there was some interview I saw where you talked about coming home and sort of decontaminating yourself before you'd even hug your wife.
Yeah.
And that resonated with me so much because, like, in the early days, particularly of the pandemic, I would go to the supermarket. My wife is pregnant, so, I was super worried about her, and she's doing great, thankfully. But, like, I would come home and I would, do the same thing and hop in the shower before I'd even give her a hug. And I think, what a dummy I am. This guy's in the emergency room. I'm buying, iceberg lettuce, and yet I'm going through the same ritual. But that must have been this must be so hard, for her, for your loved ones, for just.
Yeah, it's a stressful time for sure. And I think, medicine and science, it's so data driven. And I think, if anything, that this has shown the average person that, doctors don't have all the answers,
Yeah.
Like, a lot of the things we do, it's not because it's right or wrong. It's because we make an assessment of risk and we weigh the pros and cons and we move forward. And in this case, we just don't know much of COVID-19, right? How it's, how it's transmitted, to what extent. And so, every morning I'd come in after a shift, I'd be downstairs, I'd take off all my scrubs, put it in some special bag that stays downstairs, hop in the shower, and then I, get to sleep. But, my wife's been a champion of this. She's been supportive. And my hope is that, we're on the end of this plateau, and hopefully, continues to go down. My concern is that there will likely be a second peak. I don't know how high that's going to be, but that's typically the case with these types of things. Given the reopening, given the protests, given the fact that it's summer and people want to be out. And that's just, virology and how viruses transmit itself. So, we're in it for the long haul. And, as long as, we're working hard, we're communicating, that we have legislators like yourself and so many others that are thoughtful, willing to work with one another, I think, we're going to make it.
Yeah. How confident are you in a vaccine?
So I think we'll get a vaccine for sure. I mean, vaccines aren't 100%. I mean, even if the flu vaccine that we take every year, I get every year because I'm a hospital guy, that's not 100%, right?
Yeah.
And so if you get 50%, it's so significant. I mean, you have to get to a place where you establish herd immunity, and you get there through a vaccine or through people who have been previously exposed, and we're nowhere near that. I mean, we've done such a good job social distancing to limit this surge and this overwhelming kind of, virus that so many of us, I think up to 70%, are still not exposed to the virus. So, in lieu of a vaccine, in lieu of herd immunity, we have testing that we need to scale up, and contact tracing, two tools that we still have a lot more to do. But I mean, we're facing some significant challenges in Massachusetts with nursing homes, communities of color. I mean, you speak to any doctor in the ER or anyone, and if you would have said, who are the 2 communities that are going to get hit the hardest by this? Nursing homes and communities of color. And I think in Massachusetts, we're doubled the national average when it comes to deaths in nursing homes. So we have a lot of work to do, and I look forward to partnering with my municipal colleagues, my state house colleagues, and my federal colleagues to, put the work in and get it done, and hopefully, we come out of this stronger than how we came in.
Absolutely. Dr. Jon Santiago, thank you for everything, buddy. You are an inspiration, and we're lucky to call you a Bostonian and an elected official and a doctor.
Great.
Thank you, and be safe out there.
Thanks, Matt. I appreciate it, Councilor. We'll be in touch, okay?
So absolutely. Thank you for listening to the OPOD. Please don't forget to subscribe to us on Spotify or iTunes, wherever you get your podcast. Take care. And thanks to Jessica Morris, our producer, and our incredible guest, Jon Santiago. Be safe out there, everybody.